The people that are the wisest with the money understand the concept of a budget, understand the concept of expenses that are wants versus needs. And what I'll say to, for all of our listeners right now, when you do that listing and you write down what you purchased and what was a want or a need, at the end of the day, what we want to do is eliminate all wants for 1 year. If you eliminate all wants and only buy things you absolutely need to survive, at the end of the year, you'll have more freaking money in your bank account than you could ever imagine. Then get into investing.
I just recorded the most amazing interview with David Essel. You guys are going to really want to check this one out. We talk about his addiction in the past. We talk about a job, a career field that burnt him out, and how he completely changed his life by changing his conscious and subconscious, and how he does that for other people today. Not just financially with financial coaching, but he does marriage counseling. He helps people with addictions. I mean, guys, this is the real deal. You guys are going to love it. Check it out. My interview with David Essel. If you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you smash that like button and click subscribe. For those of you listening on a podcast platform, be sure to subscribe on whatever platform that is and leave us a rating if you can. The more likes, ratings, and subscriptions that we get, the more we can spread the message and grow our community. So we also have a free Facebook group. It's called the Average Joe Finances Network. Check us out, join the group, join the community, ask questions, and become a part of the team. All of our other social media accounts are listed in our flow page, and we have them in the video or podcast description below. Hey, how's it going, everybody? So today I have the privilege of having David Essel on the show with us. And David is a #1 best-selling author, a counselor, a master life coach, international speaker, and minister whose mission is to positively affect 2 million people or more every day. So regardless of their current circumstances, Jenny McCarthy called David the new leader of the positive thinking movement. So David's work of 38 years is also highly endorsed by the late Wayne Dyer, Chicken Soup for the Soul author Mark Victor Hansen, as well as many other celebrities and radio and television networks from around the world. He's verified through Psychology Today as one of the top counselors and life coaches in the United States, and is verified through Marriage.com as one of the top relationship counselors and coaches in the world. So David, it is an absolute honor and privilege to have you on the show with us today. Thank you for joining us.
Mike, I'm excited to be with you. And I think the topic that you've chosen for your show is so crucial. And there couldn't be a more important time, in my opinion, than right now. With everything that's been going on that and I know, everything from the election to the pandemic to, oh my gosh, people have been crushed financially. So I think it's a great podcast, and I'm excited to do whatever I can to help your listeners grow.
Fantastic. And it's again, like I said, it's an honor to have you here. I'm really excited, especially about the topic that you wanted to discuss with me today. And we're going to get into that. But first, could you tell us and my listeners a little bit about yourself and share your story?
Yeah. I started 40 years ago, and I can't believe it's been 40 years of this work. Just, boy, when people say time flies, and for all of our listeners, the one thing I want to say before I go on is that whatever goal you have, today is the day to go after it. If it's the financial one we're going to talk about or something else, but listen, if someone would have said to me, I'd be doing this for 40 years, I never would have believed it. And then to wake up and say it's been 40 years is mind blowing because it goes so darn fast. But I started on sports psychology. That was my master's degree. And I worked with athletes, health and fitness enthusiasts for years. And then in 1990, Mike, I completely burned out because I was working mainly in one industry, health, fitness, athletes, their brains, bodybuilders, their brains, and everything else. And it just got to be too much of the same thing. So I started to branch into relationships, financial studies, financial freedom courses, addiction recovery courses. I mean, the only thing we don't teach is politics. That's the only thing we don't cover, so it's been a great ride. I mentioned to you before the show, syndicated radio host for 30 years. We have 11 books out, 4 number one bestsellers. So the journey has been amazing. I continue to be a student as well as some form of teacher, but I like to make that point known. I'm going to learn from you. I'm going to learn from this interview, just like I learned from everyone else. And I think for our audience, if there's something that Mike and I talk about that you go, oh, that's not for me, it's totally for you. Okay. So we have a tendency, and when we get into talking about the different sides of the brain, we have a tendency to shy away from things that are going to challenge us, to shy away from things that are work oriented. So if I say, hey, I would highly recommend that you do this to turn your finances around or whatever, and you go, oh, that might work for someone else, but not me, just realize I'm talking right to you. And it was just like when people told me years ago that I needed to make changes. I'm a former alcoholic, cocaine addict. I knew that those stories weren't for me. They were for me. I knew the messages weren't for me, even though they were dead on for me, because I didn't want to change. Money is no different. We get into habits of spending, we get into habits of debt, and before you know it, it becomes a part of our life. And to get out of it, yes, it's going to take work. Hell yeah, it's going to take work. It's going to be worth it. So when we start to push back, just catch yourself and go, wow, he's talking about something I really need to listen to.
Wow, that's a fantastic backstory about yourself, and you definitely got pretty personal talking about the addictions that you had in your younger years. I want to talk a little bit about, you said when you started off, you were doing just sports psychology, and you were all in with that, right? And in 1990, you said you got to a point where you got burned out. What was it that burned you out as you were, pushing forward in a career field that I assume you were enjoying what you were doing? What made you get burned out?
Yeah, and I loved it. You're right on, Mike. I loved every minute of it. But this is what I've found out about myself over the years, is that I'm not going to give myself a label of a condition. Instead, I'm going to describe it. I am most myself, and I'm most on fire when every hour is a different topic. When I get a chance to get into a zone with someone for 60 minutes to help save their marriage, and then the next 60 minutes is about helping someone recover from an addiction, and the next 60 minutes is a financial freedom call, Mike, I couldn't be happier. Every hour changes. I stay energized. I don't get bored, everything. And so what I found after 10 years was I love that work, but I needed something more. I needed variety. And now, just before the show, I had my first session with a brand new client that is struggling with his girlfriend because he has an addiction that he hasn't been able to let go of. So then I go from there to you, and then after you, I've got a guy that's trying to save his marriage, so it's just phenomenal, the variety. And that's why I ended up going into so many different directions. And I want to make this mention, when people are labeled ADD or ADHD, most people take that as a limiting diagnosis. And what we do, and my career is the same, when I work with someone with that's used that title as a way to not be as successful as they want to be or could be, all I tell them is that that's not the condition holding you back. What's holding you back is your inability to utilize your ADD or ADHD to your highest ability. Does that make sense, Mike?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. If you can't take what somebody would consider a weakness and turn it into a strength, I think that's the direction you're going with this. If people could just take a look at all their weaker points in their lives, or what people would consider a weakness, and you could turn around and make that your strength. So being in the military for over 18 years now, I've seen it several times where we've had folks that, they during some down times or after pregnancies and stuff, they gain a little weight and they're having trouble passing the physical fitness test. I've seen some individuals like that turn around and go from either failing or barely passing to a year later, they become the command fitness leader.
Right.
And it's like, wow, what a drastic change. And let me tell you, when we're sitting there and we're trying to figure out where to rack and stack these folks when we're ranking them for promotion, I'm looking at the person that was down here that was at the bottom because they failed their physical readiness test and they were just struggling. And then look at what they did. They found that motivation, they turned that weakness into a strength, and they ran with it, literally. and figuratively, right?
Absolutely.
So I think that's phenomenal. I really appreciate that perspective.
So if
Absolutely.
someone is struggling with ADD or ADHD, we need to find a career for them where things change all the time. So they stay
Right.
stimulated so their brain can catch up. And that's what I found for myself. When I got into when I altered my career and started doing 1,000 different topics, there was no more fatigue. There was no more, oh, I'm bored of this or whatever it might be. And so, what we try to do with our counseling practice is we take what you and I are talking about, Mike. We look at someone's weakness and we say, let's manipulate it. And it's funny you said a year, because a lot of our work is 365 days. We tell people that, you can overcome anything, habits that are horrendous, mindsets that are terrible, in as short as 365 days. And so someone that has a desire they want to be successful, they want to work, but they don't have the focus, or they have one of these conditions, all we say is, let's find a career that matches what you perceive to be your weakness. Now it's going to be your strength, right?
100%. Yeah. And again, I don't mean to make it sound like it is a weakness, because, somebody having that condition, it's definitely not a weakness. It's just a part of who they are. You're talking about how you like to bounce around into all these different topics and all these different realms, especially when it comes to psychology, right? You're helping people with their marriages. You're helping people with their finances. I mean, you started off in sports psychology, so you're all over the place, which is phenomenal. And it's not just like, on a certain day you're doing this, and then the next day you're doing this. No, like today, you were helping somebody with their relationship this morning. Now you're
Yeah.
talking, on a topic about finances with me right now. And then after this, you're going to help somebody, save their marriage. And I think you said after that, you're going to talk to somebody about an addiction problem, or it might be the same call. Being able to be all over the place and keep your own sanity and
Yeah.
manage it speaks volumes about what you're doing. Yeah, and then on top of that, you said you were a syndicated radio host for 30 years. And then when you talked about your addiction to alcohol and cocaine, I mean, you overcame something that for a lot of people, it's a game ender.
Yeah.
For you, you turned it into a game changer because you were able to overcome it, and look at where you are today with the success that you're having. So that's pretty phenomenal.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't want to go too far down that rabbit hole because we've got a lot to talk about. You sent me a topic that you'd like to discuss today, and I think this is phenomenal. And I really want to, pick your brain on this. And that is how to awaken and change both the conscious and subconscious mind when it comes to your finances and your money. So I've talked about this with other guests in the past, right? And it's about changing your mindset. But I want to hear, so I think you have a pretty unique perspective and what, the way you want to discuss this. So I'm all ears. I definitely want to hear what you have to say.
A lot of my work began 25 years ago in the realm of what's the conscious mind, what's the subconscious mind? Why do people self-sabotage? Why do we set these intentions on New Year's Day to make more money, save more money, lose weight? And then why on February 1st is that intention gone? And so and people all the time are saying that to me, Mike, I have the best intentions. And there's that old statement, and the best intentions lead the pathway to hell. Intentions don't mean much if they're not followed by specific action steps on a daily basis in order to change a mindset. So what is a mindset? A mindset is made up of two different formulas. One is the conscious mind. The conscious mind is watching or listening to Mike and I right now. The conscious mind is wanting to learn more about finances. The conscious mind is saying, I'm going to make 2021 a different year financially. The conscious mind is saying, I know I can go to do this. I have the tool. I just bought this great book. I'm listening to these guys. I'm going to have 2021 as my financial year, the best year I've ever had. So let's say you get to February 1st and you stop your budgeting and you stop writing down your expenses and you stop writing down your income. And then all of a sudden, March 1st, you go, well, I guess I'm just not a financial guru. I guess I'll just never pick that up. So we go, well, how did the intention, when we were so excited, Mike, listening to this podcast to change our financial situation, how did it just disappear? And the answer is, it lies in the subconscious mind. So the conscious mind, I always point to the front of my head. The conscious mind is intention. It's right here. It's on the top of your mind. We're listening. Maybe you're even taking notes right now. Like you're really together. You got it together, right? That's all consciousness. Then as days or weeks go by and we slide away from our new excitement about becoming financially free. The reason for that is that these new habits or the patterns have not been done long enough to push out the old patterns that have been there for 10, 20, 30, 40 years regarding money. And that's where the subconscious mind can either be an ally or a saboteur. When we talk about shooting ourselves in the foot financially, what that means is that the subconscious mind has a pattern of overspending, under earning, non-budgeting, and it's been like that for 10, 20, 30 years. And Mike, it doesn't want to change. Okay. And the only way the subconscious becomes a saboteur financially or with addiction or anything else is because we feed it the pattern. We teach the subconscious mind what to think. Now, sometimes it begins in childhood. If you're raised in an environment from 0 to 18, where your mom and dad are like, here's my personal story. My mom and dad were so incredibly frugal. My dad was an accountant. My mom was a secretary at a school system. They were so incredibly frugal that when I got at 18, when I left the house, Mike, I went in the opposite direction. And this is pretty normal. I was so tired of not being able to have X. We couldn't have Y. We can't afford Z. That for the first 15 years of my professional career, I spent everything I had plus everything credit card companies would give me. So if they want to give me a gift of $7,000, oh my God, I will accept it. Not only will I accept it, Mike, I'll spend it for them. So I went from I could have used all that knowledge my dad had when I was a kid, but instead I went in the other direction, right? So my subconscious mind had made up its mind when I was a kid that I was never going to learn to live the way my parents did. But when I decided that being in debt and when I decided that not being able to afford what I wanted was no fun anymore, I realized that the main thing I had to change was the subconscious mindset of free spending, no budget, no worries about expenses. And I had to go in the opposite direction, Mike. All of a sudden, in order to change the subconscious into an ally, we need to do everything that we're not doing to this point. We need to start writing down everything we spend on a daily basis. Next to it, we write down the words, was it a want or was it a need? Like, this is financial freedom one-on-one. Like when you can start to do the action steps, and I'm not a fan of positive thinking to change your financial situation. I'm not a fan of vision boards to change your financial situation. I'm not a fan of affirmations to change your financial situation, because they're all a fallacy, Mike. All of those things will release endorphins in the brain to make you feel better for the 30 seconds you're saying the affirmation, but they're not doing a darn thing to change the subconscious mind that wants to spend what it wants to spend. So what we say is, well, how do we get out of this mess that we've gotten ourselves into? And it's got to be through action steps in the physical world. Now, that doesn't mean I don't believe in affirmations or positive thinking or vision boards. I think they're fine. They're simple tools. They're not going to change your life. I have yet, in all 40 years of doing this work, I've never met someone that became financially free, and I'll explain what that means, that became financially free via affirmations, vision boards, or their mindset. And if that were to happen, that'd be called a miracle. Okay. Now, I'm sure there's law of attraction fans that are listening. I am against the law of attraction almost 100%. I think it's, yeah. I really think it's nonsense, because the way it's taught is this: whatever you put out into the universe, whatever the universe is, must respond in kind. Okay. So then what we would say is, if that was true, it should be true all the time. If a law is a law, it should be unbreakable. So what it should say is, when you write down, I earn $1 million a year, if the law of attraction was true, you should be earning $1 million a year. But I don't know anyone that's earned $1 million a year over an affirmation through the law of attraction. I've yet. As a matter of fact, Dr. Joe Vitale, who's one of the stars of The Secret, and he's a multimillionaire. He's a great guy. He's as gifted as ever. On The Secret, on the book or the movie The Secret, it says that he was a homeless man, that he had affirmations of earning money, checks coming in the mail, and all this other kind of stuff. And so I got him on my show, and this is when The Secret came out. And I said, Dr. Joe, listen, I love your work, but you've got to give me a break. On The Secret, it says you were homeless, you visualized checks in the mail, and you became a millionaire. Is that true? And of course, Mike, he started laughing. He said, God, no, David. I said, well, then tell us the truth, because the book is a lie. I don't know anyone. I mean, I've helped people lose up to 250 pounds. I've never seen a person lose 250 pounds with an affirmation, a law of attraction, vision board, or anything else. Okay. I have bodybuilder friends like Rich Gaspari, who's won multiple bodybuilding titles. And I said to him one time on the air, I said, Rich, hey, did you get those medals via law of attraction thoughts? Like, did you put out into the universe, I won Mr. Olympia, and you stood on stage and you won? Well, you know that this is insane, right? It's kindergarten thinking. It's fantastical thinking. So what Dr. Joe said was, when I said, how did you earn your millions, Joe? He said, well, I was homeless and I always knew I was going to make money. And then I got a job early on in internet marketing. I worked 7 days a week, 12 hours a day for years to make my first $1 million. So, when we talk about the conscious and subconscious mind, Mike, who doesn't want to believe that if you put something out in the universe, it'll come back without you doing any work? That sounds great, but it's not real. And so what we say is that if you're putting those thoughts into your brain, if your affirmation is this, I am earning $1 million a year. By the way, just so our audience know what that means, that's $82,000 a month. How many people in the United States have the gifts, the talent, determination, and the work ethic to earn $82,000 a month? I'll tell you, it's about 2%. So if you're using affirmations that says, I am a millionaire, you're actually shooting yourself in the foot because you're lying to yourself. If you're saying I'm earning $1 million a year and you're not, that's called a lack of integrity. That's called a lie. It's just like if someone wakes up and says I'm a size 2 and they're a size 16. It's a lie. So what happens is the conscious mind loves this crap, right? It's like, I earn $1 million a year. I'm on top of the world. I won the lottery this week. That's the conscious mind. The subconscious mind is laughing its butt off, trying to find some place to muffle its laughter, because it knows the reality is that this person isn't earning $82,000 a month, and also probably never will. So if you're relying on these type of principles to find financial freedom, you'll never find it unless a miracle happens, number one. I mean, you could win the lottery. I don't know what the odds are. They're not all that great. But if you really want to learn about finances, we have to throw the nonsense out and get down to the basics. And when you get down to the basics and do the work that you and I are talking about, we can turn that subconscious mind that's used to spending when it wants to spend. Oh my God, Saks Fifth Avenue never has a sale like this. And you go and buy 3 more pairs of jeans when you have 22 in your closet already. I mean, that's just irresponsible financial management. So what we say is, let's get serious. Do you want financial freedom? And the definition to me of financial freedom is really simple. It's emotional freedom around money. What does that mean? It means that when unexpected things happen, you're prepared, you have the money, and it's never an issue. A number of years ago, I took a woman through our course, Financial Freedom Now. She had been broke her whole life. She had made decent income, but her expenses were out of control. She had no idea about budgeting. And I worked with her for a year. About 30 days when we were done, Mike, the greatest thing in the world happened. I get this text from her. She goes, oh my God, I just left the dentist's office. It was a $5,000 bill that I wasn't expecting. But David, I want to give you great news. When the dentist told me I had to have the procedure done today and it cost $5,000, I said, not a problem, doc. I pulled out my checkbook and wrote a check for $5,000. She goes, David, this is what you were teaching me. It's called financial freedom. And that's what we want for everyone, Mike.
Let's take a quick break from today's episode to hear from our show sponsors. Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's Mike Cav from Average Joe Finances. Just want to talk to you today about Prep Agent. If you're interested in learning how to become a real estate agent and being able to pass the test on your first try, check out Prep Agent. Check out the link below in the show notes or in the video description. Hey everybody, how's it going? This is Mike Cav with Average Joe Finances. We're living in some pretty tough times right now, and if you don't have life insurance, you should probably get it. You need to protect yourself, protect your family, and protect what you own. Check out the link below in the show notes or in the video description. Welcome back, everybody. Let's get back into it. That's a great way to go with this. That's phenomenal. There's probably some people that are going to be upset hearing about the, affirmations are a lie and things like that. So I'm not going to lie. So I do daily affirmations, right? Usually in the morning and before I go to bed. But I'm not relying on those affirmations to be the be all end all of what it is that I'm trying to accomplish with my goals, right? The key thing is those affirmations to me is just a reminder, a daily reminder of what I need to do to get there, to get to that point. I had a guest on my show that was really big into to affirmations and talking about the subconscious mind and changing how you think. Near the end of our interview, it always came down to action. What actionable steps are you taking to get there?
Yeah.
Because the affirmation itself is not going to be the thing that puts $1 million in your pocket. It's the steps that you took to get out of debt, invest, and just move forward in your life that are going to get you there. Right.
Well, Mike, affirmations have power for the time you're saying them and about 30 seconds afterwards. We actually, through HeartMath organization, heartmath.org, they've done studies and they've seen that when you say a positive affirmation, the brain lights up. There's a cascade of chemicals, dopamine, GABA, serotonin, that are released in the brain. Like, we all know this about affirmations. And so from a initial starting point of motivation, use your affirmations. The only thing is you got to be careful. If you're saying affirmations that are not true, that's where you get into your integrity. That's where you start to destroy your integrity. Now, if you say, I am working 25 hours a week specifically to increase my income so that I reach a goal of $150,000 this year, which is double my income from last year, I'm totally great with that affirmation. But I always say to people, if you want to make more money, never go with an affirmation more than double your current income. And I would even say go to 50% of it. So if you're earning $100,000 right now, then make an affirmation for 150. And
that's fair. That's definitely fair.
Right. And now you have something that is potentially possible if you do the work. And the brain, both the conscious and the subconscious mind, can understand something like that. It's very realistic. It's exciting. If you were to increase your income by 50% in a year, that's pretty exciting.
That's phenomenal.
The average increase in a corporation in America is 3% income. So someone making $10,000 at a corporation, their average upgrade for the next year is going to be about 3%. They're going to get about a 3% increase in the money that they make, their wages, right? Okay, well, that's pretty disgusting because it doesn't get you anywhere. But if you were to say, I'm going to earn 50% more, now we're talking. And that's doable if you do the work.
Yeah, I mean, because 3% is not even really keeping up with what the true cost of inflation is, right? Everybody thinks inflation's about 2.5% per year. I had a guest on the other day who was explaining how the true inflation rate is actually 5 to 7% realistically per year. And that show hasn't aired yet, but it'll be out, I think, by the time this one airs. So a lot of people think that, they're getting these small pay increases and that it's going to be life changing for them. And, hey, I'm just going to live off the old amount that I was making. And, I'm going to invest that extra money, which that's a great thing to do. But you have to realize, too, the reason why you're getting this increase in your wages or cost of living allowance going up if you're retired and during a pension. The reason why you're getting this is because everything around you is creeping up in price as well.
That's right.
So if you think that same payments that you were making on, for your grocery budget, if you think that your grocery budget isn't going to sneakily go up another 3% every year as well, or realistically 5 to 7%, then you don't realize you're slowly leaking money and you're slowly losing the battle. One of the things I'm going to point out is that and I really appreciate what you said about those affirmations. They need to be realistic. You can't just sit here and say, by the end of the year, I'm going to have $20 million. It's unrealistic. You need to be real with yourself and with the universe. If that's if that's what you believe, right? So you have to be realistic. Things don't just manifest out of nowhere. Some people would argue and say that they do, but realistically, that just doesn't happen. I think more along the lines of, we're creatures of habit, humans in general. We're animals just like all the other animals on the planet. We're just at the top of the animal kingdom, right? We can think for ourselves and change our own route and trajectory in life based off of simple decisions that we make, right? But not only that, it's changing the habits and changing the mindset, like what you're talking about. Just because you write something down, or just because you do an affirmation and you feel great about it for 30 seconds to a minute, doesn't mean that your life has just changed. Because when I say that we're creatures of habit, I'm talking about, like you said, the behaviors over 20, 30, 40 years of your entire life
Yep.
that you're now trying to change in a small window. And that 20 years of being a creature of that habit, that's always in the back of your mind. That's always weighing in on your decision making. Like, should I buy this or should I not buy this? And the fact that you actually have to sit there and think about something when you know it's an impulse buy, but you do it anyway, that's where you start losing, right? So yeah, 100% agree with you there. So I like what you're talking about, where after you buy a couple items, or just, you sit down, you write it down, what you bought, how much it was, and then you write next to it, was this a want or a need? And I think that helps you realize with your conscious and subconscious what you're actually doing with your money. I had another guest on too, and this episode has not aired yet, but it'll probably be out by the time this one comes out. So another guest that I spoke to the other day, we were talking about your mindset when you go to make these purchases. There's two different kinds of, I guess, categories of how you are with your money, what we talked about. And that was, are you a spender or are you a saver? And I never really looked at it from that perspective before, right? And it made me look at how I make my purchases versus how my wife makes purchases. Now, my wife is 100% a saver. I, on the other hand, am a spender. And it's funny because I didn't realize it. That's the way I was actually changing how I spent, was kind of similar to the way that him and I were discussing it. I changed my mindset because I, like you, I guess in my younger years as well, being in the Navy, I would get my paycheck and I'd say, well, I earned this money, I'm going to go spend it, right? Oh, I got a credit card and it has this much of a limit. Cool. That means I can spend this much money. Wrong. But I didn't know that then. I just thought, okay, I have this disposable income and I'm going to go get the things that I want, the things that I like. I didn't realize that over the years. And then, I got married, I had kids, and I didn't realize as this stuff was creeping up, this debt that was building and building and building. And I'm just like, oh no, we'll just keep making our payments. We're fine. We're fine. We're fine until, $26,000 in credit card debt later. I'm like, where'd this come from?
Yes.
That's when I realized I had to change everything, because I knew at the time my goal was to get stationed in Hawaii. I was going to fight no matter what to make sure, like, my last 1 or 2 tours in the Navy was going to be in Hawaii, because that's where we wanted to be. So I said, hey, before we go to Hawaii, it is super expensive. Yes, we'll get, additional income from the military for being there, but we want to retire and stay there. So we have to change things, because when I retire from the Navy, well, half that pay is gone. And then the allowances I get for being here, that's gone too. We had to change everything. And we were able to, in a 2-year time frame, get rid of that $26,000 in credit card debt. We also had some loan debt too that we got rid of, and moved to Hawaii with $40,000 in the bank. And we were able to buy a nice home out here, and do the renovations that we wanted because we had the cash in the bank. I guess the point that I'm trying to make here is that I had to completely change, I guess, my identity with finances and my identity with money and my relationship with it, and how I treated it. That's why I really appreciate your story, especially when you talk about the things that you've overcome in life to the success that you have now. A lot of that has to do with what you did, like with what you're talking about right now with your conscious and subconscious. So this conversation has just been phenomenal. I really appreciate it.
And Mike, the other thing is that anyone can do this. I don't have any gift.
Absolutely.
I don't have any kind of financial gift that someone else doesn't have. As a matter of fact, I had an opportunity, as I mentioned, with my dad. I never paid attention to his teachings. I had to teach myself in my 30s how to get out of my own way. When we talk about changing the subconscious mind, it normally takes, and this is good news, bad news, it takes about a year if you're working really hard to turn that subconscious mind, let's say, from an emotional spender into a saver. It takes about a year. And the reason for it is there's multiple reasons. But number one, when you make up, and all this has to be done in writing, Mike, we don't believe anything changes up here. You have to write out your plan, your budget, your expenses, your income, everything's got to be put in writing. But when you make a decision that you're going to start cutting back on your expenses by X amount, and I'll tell you a story in a second about a couple that I helped buy their first home recently. You've got to keep that through the holidays. You've got to keep that change through your kids' birthdays. You've got to keep that change through your wife's birthday, your husband's birthday. In other words, if you really are going to change any long-term habit in the subconscious mind, you've got to be able to do it for the first 365 days in a row without a slip in order for that subconscious to be switched and for it to become a natural saver. It doesn't just happen overnight. So there's a couple that I'm working with in their mid 40s. They had 3 children, never had bought a home, never thought they could afford one. And so then they finally came in and took our financial freedom course and said, listen, we're in our 40s. We really need to have some stability with a home. Can you help us do it? And I said, not a problem at all. So where do you want to start? Well, we started with expenses. I either start with belief systems or expenses in our financial freedom course. So I said to them, hey, let's do this. I want you to write down everything that you spend and was it a want or a need? And let's see what it is. Well, at the end of 30 days, we saw that they were spending $2,000 a month more on groceries than they needed for a family of 5. And they were spending between $2,000 and $4,000 a month, believe it or not, on experiences, dinners, movies, all of this outside stuff, So now they both had good incomes, but at the level that they were spending at the end of every month, they had about $500 to put away in savings. Well, that's not enough to buy a house unless you're going to be, looking way down the road. So I got them to see how way off their expenses were. And within 9 months, we had them save $30,000. And in 9.5 months, they bought their first home. And they were shocked to see $2,000 to $4,000 a month going out the window that wasn't necessary. But the reason they were able to see it, Mike, is because they put it on paper. They didn't say, no, we're doing fine with groceries. We didn't overspend this week. Oh, we only went out to dinner once last week. I don't care if you go out to dinner once. How much was it? And if you have a major goal to change your finances, you may eliminate dinners for a year. Which leads me into my next story. A guy, 40 years of age, never bought a house before, wanted to buy a house. He was in sales. He said he has to entertain, so he cannot take away his entertainment budget, which came out of his own salary. It wasn't that he was being given a budget by the company. So I said to him, how bad do you want to buy the house? He said, oh my God, it's the most important thing in the world. And so then I said, no dinners for a year. That's it. Make one change. Just no dinners for 12 months. And you can pretty much guess the end of the story. At the end of a year, he had his down payment for a house. So when people think that this financial freedom is way above them, they're not smart enough, they don't know how to do it, it's not true at all. These are just normal stories I'm telling you from all these clients that we've worked with. Have they had to get serious? Yes. Was it painful at times? Sure. When you're used to going out drinking and having fun, when you're used to going out to dinner 3 times a week and you pull all that away, yeah, there's going to be a little bit of stress because the subconscious is used to that. We justify, we rationalize, we deny that we have financial problems, and they only get worse. But the minute you have a program, Mike, and you follow that program, and what we say to people is you really need an accountability partner. Whether it's me, whether it's someone else that teaches this stuff, find a teacher. Don't think you're going to do it through a book. You need someone that every week is going to be saying, send me your expenses. I want to see the wants and needs. Send me your debt. I want to see how you're doing paying off your credit cards. And that's what we do as financial counselors. You were hands-on. So can you change it from a book? Can you totally change your financial situation from a book? Well, some people could, but the odds are pretty tiny. Have you ever heard of Harv Eker?
No, I'm sorry.
No. Okay. He wrote a great book. You would love it. As a matter of fact, it's called Secrets of the Millionaire Mind. Okay. Secrets of the Millionaire Mind. It was the fastest personal growth book to #1 on the New York Times best-selling list in the history of publishing. And this was about 10 years ago when the book came out. Harv and I were talking about his struggles with finances before he finally got over the hump. When he was a kid, his father was a builder. So his father would build 10 houses. They'd make a ton of cash. Then his father wouldn't build for another 6 months and they'd run out of money. They'd be flat broke. And then his father would build 10 houses. They'd have a ton of cash. So that was the household that Harv was grown up in. So when he became an entrepreneur, he did the same thing. He'd open a business. He'd make a ton of money. Then he'd slow down, take time off, go on vacation, do different things, and then come back and realize that he was broke again. So he'd open up another business. He was following the footsteps of his father. If you're raised in a family that was not fiscally responsible, there's a good chance you're carrying forward subconscious habits that you saw your parents do. One of my other clients, when I worked with her and her partner, she was someone else that had no clue of how much she made. She didn't know what her expenses was on a weekly basis. And she really didn't want, a lot of us don't want to look at this stuff, Mike. We don't even want to see what our monthly average expenses are, because then it brings to reality that we have to change. So we try to stay away from it. But one of the things I said to her is, it seems like you carry a lot of shame and guilt around money. And tell me about the way you were raised. Well, every Saturday, her mom would take her to the store. They would buy all these clothes, and then she'd help her mom put them in the closet, take the tags off so her husband wouldn't see the amount of money she was spending. So this was the environment she was raised in. So she just repeated the same thing. When she got to be an adult, was always financially strapped until she saw where her spending came from. And then we were able to switch it around. But these stories I'm telling you are all tucked in the subconscious, where we justify, rationalize, and defend our spending so we don't have to make changes.
I grew up in a similar household, right? So my father had his own trucking company and he did air freight. And it all depended on what kind of contracts he had at the time with how much money he was making. So there was some months where, I mean, literally he'd make like $100,000 in a month. And then there was some months where he made like 8,000. And it's like, okay, things are very different this month with, how things are going. So I did grow up seeing that myself. So I would see the times when we would spend a lot of money, and then I would see the times where we're kind of strapped. It all came crashing down, obviously, with September 11th, because for air freight, for his particular business, a lot of places wound up shutting down after that. A lot of his contracts were lost. His main contract, they shut down their bay over at JFK for a while, and they had to let him go as a contractor with them. So that became very painful. That was a big turning point in our lives. And at the time, I had just joined the Navy, and I was still in high school, but I was getting ready to graduate and then leave that following year and leave for basic training. So I come back after that and I'm visiting home, and I'm actually helping my family move out of the house. It's just, there's little things like that. I never really looked at that before as something that I guess affected my mentality when it came to how I spend.
Yeah.
So, and I guess it did, because every time I had a little bit of money, I would go buy the things that I want. And, oh, I've got room on my credit card and I really want to go get this item, right? Or this computer or whatever. And I would spend it. I think, those real life stories, and even my own, like, this is stuff that our listeners here can identify with and realize that, you do need some type of accountability. And this is one of the things I do too, as well as I'm also a financial coach. And some of my clients, follow up with them and I'm like, hey, okay, show me your budget. Where are we at right now? Sometimes you can hear the disappointment in their voice, and
Yes.
then they realize, hey, I got to get better. I got to get better. And when you have somebody that's helping hold you accountable, not hold your hand, but holding you accountable for your actions, you tend to try a little bit harder, and I'm happy to report that individual has completely changed and come around. It just took a couple months of really digging in to find out where the problems really were. 100% really identify with that perspective that you're sharing. I have a couple questions I like to ask, and there's one in particular. We've kind of already discussed how long you've been doing this, but I want to know, David, for you personally, out of all the different coaching and just marriage counseling and financial counseling and just addiction counseling, out of all of these things, what do you enjoy the most? What brings you the most joy? And I know it's probably all of them, but what do you really enjoy about what you're doing to help change people's lives?
Mike, it's a beautiful question. And the simple answer is I love everything. But I'll tell you, the subconscious mind is my baby. This is what I love explaining to people, that we don't, when people go, I don't know why I do this. Like every time there's a sale, I go and buy crap and I don't need it. And I can explain to them about the difference between the conscious and subconscious mind,
Right.
and why am I sabotaging, this position? Why am I not taking advantage of all the 401k stuff I can do? Why am I, and so to me, to be able to describe the difference of someone's intention, you might have a great intention, but if you're not following through with that means the opposite message is stronger in the subconscious. So this is my real love, and then teaching people that you can't change a habit via thoughts. You and I could talk
Right.
positive thoughts all the time. You and I could do all we want to talk and talk and talk and talk. But it's not until, if you want to change that subconscious with any habit that isn't healthy, until you start writing and following through and really being able to look for patterns. Like when you bought that last pair of jeans, what was going on? I'll ask a client that. It was a $150 pair of jeans. You have 45 in the closet. What was going on? And there's always some emotional reason. Like, they were pissed off. Their husband, got mad at them for something. Their kids weren't paying attention and they needed a break. So they went to the store to feel better about themselves, right? It's like, so all addictions, and spending is an addiction. Emotional spending is a freaking addiction, just like heroin. All addictions are caused by our inability to deal with life emotion. So an emotional spender, if they're bored, they go on Amazon and spend $150. Why? Not because they needed the crap, but because they were bored. Or they're resentful that maybe their partner got something that they wanted and they didn't get what they wanted. And so I'm just going to go. If he's going to go and buy that new truck, screw it. I'm going to go buy this new ring. It's like, so there's emotions. And when we look at emotional spending, the opposite of emotional spending is what's called emotional regulation. And what that means is, we go to hit the buy button on Amazon and we go, wait a minute, I was just listening to Mike and David. I'm not purchasing this because I want it. So why am I? Am I bored? Am I angry? Am I frustrated? Am I resentful? What's going on that makes me want to do this? And so when we get in touch with emotions, we can start to emotionally regulate, which means we say no to the past habit. And then we institute a brand new habit that has nothing to do with money in order to change the subconscious long term. So that's really my love, is explaining the power. Anything that we do without thinking is called a subconscious reaction or a knee-jerk reaction. So when you go buy something that's not necessary, look for the emotion why, and then work on dealing through that emotion without purchasing in order to satisfy your heart, soul, or whatever it might be.
Right on. So 2 key takeaways that I think I'm getting out of this is changing your subconscious mindset has to be key. And the other thing is intentions, while they're great, intentions without action are meaningless.
Perfect.
So absolute pleasure having this conversation with you today, David. I'd like to ask you one more question,
Sure.
and that is, where can people find more information about you? And do you have a website or social media links that you can share with us?
Yeah, the best thing to do is go to the website, talkdavid.com, TALK David.com. Super easy to remember because that's all I do, Mike, is talk. So we have a website dedicated to my voice. And if they go to talkdavid.com, they can see all the books we have. They can find the financial freedom course, or if they're struggling with addiction or relationships, of course, as you have said, we do it all. So just go to talkdavid.com. We have a free blog there. There's hundreds of articles. I think we have over 2,000 videos on my YouTube channel. You can just go to YouTube, Google David Essel, and find 2,000 things to watch if you're bored with life. Really remember this. It doesn't matter where you are in this very moment. If you're willing to do the work, you can become financially free. You can start being emotionally relaxed around money. It's the same strategy that all the millionaires use. As a matter of fact, Thomas Stanley, who wrote an amazing book, The Millionaire Next Door. Mike, here's a trivia question for you. What's the average household cost of the average millionaire in America? Do you have any idea what it might be?
You said the average household cost?
The cost of a house that the average millionaire lives in a house that costs what in the USA?
Probably 400,000.
350,000. Very close. So when people think about millionaires, they think, oh my God, they're in a 10,000 square foot mansion or whatever it might be, right? Not at all. As a matter of fact, the average millionaire resoles their shoes 3 times before they get new ones. Okay, gang? So let's start thinking in these terms, instead of this free fall spending thing and especially during pandemic, people stuck in their house, Amazon's going crazy. All these places that deliver, there's so much emotional spending going down. But remember, the people that are the wisest with the money understand the concept of a budget, understand the concept of expenses that are wants versus needs. And what I'll say to, for all of our listeners right now, when you do that listing and you write down what you purchased and what was a want or a need, at the end of the day, what we want to do is eliminate all wants for 1 year. if you eliminate all wants and only buy things you absolutely need to survive, at the end of the year, you'll have more freaking money in your bank account than you could ever imagine. Then get into investing.
I love it. Love it. As a matter of fact, my wife's been talking about, she wants to do a no spend year coming up. So we're talking about it. We'll see. I need to get a couple more things from my recording studio, and then maybe we'll do it.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, so you know, the focus will only be on putting our money into what we currently invest in, and then the rest of it save up and see what we have at the end of the year. So it's funny that this is what we're talking about, because I literally just had this conversation with my wife last week. Every weekend we sit down and we go over, you know, our finances, and we talk about what our goals are and what the future is going to look like. This year, or this upcoming January, we want to do a goals retreat. It's something that I heard about a lot on Bigger Pockets, and you know, I really like the idea about it. And so my wife and I, since our in-laws are here visiting, you know, the kids get to stay here with them, and we're going to go out and just stay at a local hotel here on Oahu, and we're going to focus on what our goals are for the year, make sure we're aligned, because a lot of times her goals differ from mine and mine differ from hers. So I think, you know, one of the key things we want to try this year is get ourselves aligned 100% and then attack it full force this year. So maybe it is a subconscious thing that this is what we're talking about, because man, it's what my wife and I have been talking about for like the past week or two. So it's pretty funny.
Mike, you know what's so awesome about what you just said?
Yeah.
Is that every couple with us right now should be following what you and your wife are doing. And I mean that sincerely. Take that every Saturday, see how you're doing. Don't let too much time go by. Take a weekend a year to plan your finances. And I love what your wife came up with. I think, you know, a year of no spending. I just think that is absolutely brilliant.
David, absolute pleasure having you on. So for our listeners that are watching this on YouTube, I'll make sure that all of the links that David described are in the show notes below. And we'll also, for the folks listening as a podcast, it'll also be in the podcast show notes. David, wow, what a great conversation. Thank you so much for joining us. It was an absolute pleasure having you here.
Mike, I had a blast. Right on, brother.